Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lee, Lead Admin Evangelist at Salesforce, and this is our first episode of Automate This in 2024. Now, custom settings and custom metadata types are really cool tools that admins should have in their awesome admin tool belt. So, have you heard of them but not sure how to use them? Well, after this episode, check out the blog that I wrote using custom labels, custom settings, and custom metadata types, or CMDT for short, instead of hard coding things in your Salesforce org. So in this episode, we'll unlock that mystery with some real-world solutions using both. So if this is your first episode, Automate This is a monthly series showcasing trailblazers like you doing some amazing things with automation. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. And I see folks are joining from Ukraine. Thanks for joining us. DC. We have the UK, so North Carolina. I see Andy, Salesforce Break. Thanks so much for joining us. And the best way to be notified when we live stream is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page. You get an email reminder the day of the event. And to interact during the live stream, post your comments in the chat and interact with our other viewers. And to engage with me and my guest presenters today, start your question with a Q colon so that we can easily scan through and identify those questions and get them answered during our Q&A section. So here's what you're going to learn in today's episode from our two guest presenters. 3 things you will learn from Warren: what custom settings are, how to use custom settings in Flow, and how to create auto number fields with custom criteria. Now, 3 things we will learn from Corinne is what custom metadata types are, specific use cases for custom metadata types, and how to use custom metadata types and Flow to streamline a sophisticated formula. So I love custom settings and custom metadata types, and I think that they are a very understated admin superpower. So when I saw these 2 episode idea submissions, I knew I wanted these presenters paired together. So welcome Flownatics, Corinne Rydman, and Salesforce MVP Warren Walters to Automate This.
Hey.
So
How's it
Warren,
going?
Howdy.
So Warren will show us how he uses custom settings and Flow to create a dynamic round robin for leads, and Corinne will show us how she used custom metadata types and Flow to embed organizational rubrics that turn raw number data into easy to read graphic presentations in a record. All right, so we're going to talk to Warren first. Now, how did you get started with Salesforce, and when did you get started with automation? Was it Cloudflow Designer or Flow Builder?
That's such a funny question. I think for a lot of new people in Salesforce, they don't know that there was a different version of like Flow before Flow Builder, which is kind of cool. But yes, I did actually start on Cloudflow Designer, and I overall I got started about eight years ago at just a random internship. I didn't know anything about Salesforce, and it kind of took me in. I learned the administrative piece, and then of course, if you I guess know a little bit about my background, I also stayed heavily involved with the developer side of things. But I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of both, low code, no code, and then even the more complex stuff of doing code as well on the Salesforce platform.
Great. And what is the coolest automation that you've built?
Some cool automations. I've done a lot, and I think for me, I definitely like to lean more on combining flows and code together. So, like maybe building some invocable methods. So, what I can think about right now is probably when I embedded like a data loading kind of system inside of a flow where you go through a screen flow. There is some Apex that is involved to get a static resource in a CSV, and then process that data and insert it into your organization. So I thought that was really cool. I think it's super fun, and yeah, I like doing like complex stuff and things that are a little bit harder inside of flows and in Salesforce.
Now, you're involved in FlowFest, and I had the privilege of speaking at the last one, which I believe was like the sixth one. So, for those in the audience who don't know, what is FlowFest and how do they learn more about it?
Yeah, that's super awesome. You bring that up. FlowFest is a flow building like hackathon competition that is put on by the community. I'm one of not really an organizer. I help build out some of the practice problems and the architecture that's involved with FlowFest. But ideally, what it is it's a time based competition. Everybody kind of joins in and jumps in at the same time. You get problems that have increasing difficulty as you go on, and you kind of compete to become the Flowfest champion. There's also like learning involved, of course. So as if you're just watching along if you're not a participant, you're just watching along. There's different talks that go on. So from people in the community like yourself, and there's also opportunities to win prizes and things like that. So I definitely recommend checking it out if you're interested in flows and kind of want to test your skills against the best in the world, right? And I think it's just like flowfestfans.com if you want to look at that.
About how many people joined like the last one?
We
Contestant.
had about, I think, 150 contestants for
Wow.
the last one. Yeah, and it definitely is starting to grow as a competition. And anybody is able to go through, and we encourage everybody to compete and just have fun with it, even if you don't see yourself as a flow expert or anything like that. I think it's fun to just give it a try and look at the challenges.
Great. Thanks, Warren. Oh, hold on. That was not expected. Let's see. Most problems. All right. Let's talk to Corinne. So, share with us how you got started in automation, Cloudflow Designer or Flow Builder.
As Warren mentioned earlier, there is a crew of us that didn't know about Cloud Flow Builder. I was one of them. I started off with Flow Builder right off the bat. In 2020 is when I really got serious about getting my Salesforce admin certification. And so took a deep dive, like directly into Flow Builder, and just started with, migrating simple workflows.
Great. And what's the coolest automation that you've built?
So I am most proud of a screen flow that I built to guide users through requesting a contract for a consultant that their team wants to work with. It uses a lot of the same components in today's demo that I'm going to show, but along with also being a screen flow, it also incorporates subflows and email alert notifications and reactive screen components. So there's a lot of moving parts and it's very sophisticated, and I'm super proud of that one.
I think the whole reactivity for screen flows is just really cool.
It's so cool. So cool. I was like last month's example, right? It was just the entire flow being able to be like in one screen is a game changer. It's awesome.
Yeah, like before you had to click next and then like see the result of whatever it is and then go back, make a change, click next. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
total game
At best,
changer.
maybe you could get like some conditional visibility, right? But the
Mhm.
fact that like you can enter something in on the same screen and then all of a sudden it changes all of your inputs on this other thing. It's so cool. It's
Yeah,
so cool.
great. Well, thanks. All right, so we're going to head back to Lauren. Now, Lauren, can you share with us your use case and how you built it?
Yeah, so my use case is building out a custom auto number field. Like that, it's everything kind of centers around that idea of Salesforce has auto number fields that can automatically get generated, and those are great. But every once in a while, you may want to have different criteria for your custom auto number field. And the way that we build this out is by using custom settings and some of the properties that custom settings allow us to do with flows and other automations that are on the Salesforce platform. So the crux of it is, we have this field that we need to have available globally, like across the board. If you think of an auto number field, it needs to be available at kind of any time for any of your records, automations, and things like that. So we can't really use a standard object for that, right? So now we move into the realm of using custom settings and using that to hold that global value that we are looking for. And then making sure that we have automation to do all the things that auto numbers do, like increment based on, just whenever there's another record. So we'll be using two separate flows and a few different like lead assignment rules to get this configured. But yeah, it should be really fun to kind of understand different ways of using custom settings and how these like setup objects can really help out when you're building different sorts of like logic automation and business processes in your org.
All right, so I'll have you share your solution with us.
All right, let's jump into it. We all should be seeing my screen. And yeah, like I was mentioning before, we're going to be focusing kind of on a round robin type of solution, right? So some of you may be familiar with this traditional like Salesforce round robin lead assignment process. And from here, it works based off of the standard auto numbers, right? So if lead one comes in, it's going to be assigned to like user one. Lead two comes in, it gets assigned to user two, and it keeps repeating, right? As soon as if there's only 3 reps in rotation, it's going to repeat back to 1, 2, and 3, standard round robin kind of stuff. And if you've gone through this, right, there's some outline of like creating an auto number and creating the formula that will generate the values, that kind of like number field that tells the lead assignment rules what to assign it for. So this works out really great, like I mentioned, but what we struggle with is, okay, this is going to work on every lead, right? Every time you insert a lead, the assignment rules are going to go off. So what we're trying to do here is, okay, maybe instead of having that auto number go off for every lead that gets inserted into our org, we only want the ones based on certain criteria. And the criteria for us in this demo is based on the source of our lead being web. But of course, as you start to work on this and you can see some ideas in your own org, you can base this off of anything that you're working on, right? It does not need to just be the lead source field. So jumping into the lead record here, just kind of giving like a little bit more context, a little bit more background so we can see before we jump into the automations, right? There is this lead number field that continues to just generate. This is the standard one by Salesforce auto number field. And right, this is the 87th lead. If I create another one, it's going to be 88, 89, and it's going up and up and up. And Salesforce as a system tracks this value somewhere. Right? We don't have access to it, and that's fine. Like it's a standard auto number field. But what we want to do is have our own field number that is based off of some criteria that we work with. Just really quickly, speaking back on the lead number field, right? We can see that there's this round robin field that helps dictate which rep we are doing the assignment based on this lead. Now, really quickly, I'm going to just throw some numbers into this dynamic auto number field. Ideally, this is going to get generated on the fly, but just to show you how this kind of gets calculated, I want to show this off. Right, so I put in 10 here, and since we only have 3 reps in rotation, it's doing the calculation to say, okay, for rep number, for the number of 10 that's associated with rep number 2. If we change this to maybe 11, this number is going to change to 3, right? Going through that rotation, if we change this to 12, it moves back to 1, right? And it's going to keep going through that order as we go through all of the different values and rotate all of the different values. But ideally, we don't want to populate this manually. We're going to be building some automation to automatically set this field up. So let's jump into our lead objects so that we can look at how these values are set before we even jump into some of the automations, because we need some of this setup stuff that we're working on. So let's check out this lead source web number. That's just the standard the number that we have in here. And this value, all it really does is it holds the current number, our custom auto number field. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a number field, 18 and 0 for the length and the decimal places. And you could even mark this as unique. Technically, the auto number values, right, they should be unique, but depending on your automations and things like that, it may actually cause an error if you have it as unique. So test it out, make sure that you have the numbers set correctly before you jump into that. The other field, which kind of dives in a little bit with some of the magic that we have here, is this formula field that calculates if the value is 1, 2, or 3, or rotating all the way back. So we're using a formula function in here called the modulus function, and basically what this calculates is the remainder of a value. Now there's tons of documentation on this. This is not just a Salesforce type of function, so I definitely read up on it, but depending on the number of reps, which in this case it's 3, and that's this number over here, depending on that number, this will rotate 1, 2, or 3 as it goes along. So kind of some of the magic behind it, and there technically is some maintenance too, right? If you have more reps come in, you will need to update this value in here as it's going along, but you can kind of see based on the demo the ideas behind this. So this field is where a lot of the magic comes in, where it's rotating, right? That number that we were looking at a little bit earlier, it's rotating it 1, 2, and 3, and then back to the original one based on any numbers that come into here. So this is the setup for the fields that we need to make this work. This is our custom auto number field, and this is the field that helps with our round robin assignment as we're going through. Now let's take a look at the lead assignment and how they kind of work. So I'm already in lead assignment rules for our lead, and let's just jump into the simple one for right now so we can kind of see how this all works. Whenever our lead assignment rule is set to 1, we're going to assign the current lead to rep 1. Whenever that web round robin field is set to 2, we're going to assign it to rep 4, right? So technically going to the next, or going like deeper in our rep list. And then once it's set to 3, we want it to rep 5. So these can kind of be anybody in our organization. I just have our reps lined up here based on these names, but they could be different people, they could be queues, right? It really depends on, or even groups, right? It really depends on how your round robin lead assignment is actually working. So let me activate this, and we can move into the custom setting, which is, let's go to custom settings, which is the thing that holds that global value of where we are currently at with the numbers that we're working with. So jumping in, if you've never seen custom settings before, they work very similarly to objects inside, like regular custom objects inside of Salesforce. You could, of course, go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to click on the auto number one that I have created already. And this is just showing some like basic information about it, right? It's visible. We have the name for it, and you can see it even ends in __C, which is it's very similar to the regular custom objects that we work with. You can create fields on them, and in this instance, I've created a field, right? This is that global field that's going to hold those auto number values for us to track. And it's just set to a number 18, right? A length of 18 and 0. Hopefully, I guess you don't have an auto number that long, but you have that possibility in here. So this is going to work based on our lead source field, and this is going to be the specific auto number value that we track for it. I'm going to jump into manage, and this is how you really create like individual records for your custom settings, right? You don't need to go into the like standard UI and create it. But since this is more of a setup object, you will just jump into you control all this stuff in the setup as well. So I'm going to hit new here, and what we're seeing is it's defaulting, and I just set that default value up for us, but it's kind of important to at least put some starting value for our auto numbers. We see that when we create a standard auto number field, right? We need to set some sort of value for it to start as. So I'm starting it as 1, but of course, maybe you already have a bunch of records and you're data loading those and things like that. So you can decide to set that value based on whatever is already existing. So now that is set, let's jump into our flows so that we can see some of the magic behind like how the automations and how that field is actually getting set. So we see here, I've got 2 flows, a before flow and an after flow. I'll kind of go into, as we get into it, a little bit deeper on why we need these 2, but it's essentially because of order of operations. Let's jump into the before flow first and take a peek at how it is working. This is based on the creation of our record, and we're basically checking to see, doing some additional validation so we don't run our flow if we don't need to, right? We're checking to see if our lead source has a value and then doing that fast update. Then we are getting our auto number object, and we don't need to set any filters or anything like that. It's always going, since this is more of a global object, it's always going to get the correct one, and we're just grabbing all of the fields. So this step in here, it's just grabbing the custom setting, and ideally it's going to have the location, which I think this is the name of my org, and it's going to grab these values in here as well. So if it had any additional fields, of course, we would grab those, but ideally right now, all we care about is this auto number field that is in there. Now we need to do some checks. We're double checking that our lead source is set to web. Ideally, we could have additional criteria to say like, okay, lead source is set to phone, and have different auto numbers for that criteria. And now we are doing some incrementation based on our custom setting, right? So we're grabbing that custom setting value, whatever is inside of it, whatever is inside of our web auto number field, we're going to add 1 to it, because this is where we're starting to do that like global incrementation. Every time we see something that matches that criteria, we need to move on to the next one and the next one and the next one as we go along in our process. So we're just adding 1 to it, and then we're going to take that value and update our actual lead, right? The lead that has just been created. We're going to take that value, maybe it started out as 1, so now it is 2 as it goes through here, and we're just setting that value into our lead web number field. So this is the automation that sets that value for us. So like I was kind of mentioning in the beginning, we need to do this in a before trigger because of order of operations, right? We don't want our lead assignment rules to go off before this value has been updated. So we use a before triggered flow to update our values, and then after our lead assignment rules run, we can jump into the after trigger flows to actually do our update on our custom setting. So really quickly, I've jumped into the after flow. And a lot of the setup criteria and all of that is very similar to what we saw before, right? This is on create. One of the major differences is instead of doing a fast update, we are doing a action, right? So an after trigger flow, and this is better, more performant when you're updating related records. So we're still doing our query for the custom settings, right? We're pulling that auto number field, still doing the same exact decision element to pull in and checking that our lead source is set to web. Still doing our incrementation as we go through and doing that adding one. And this is just matching everything up as it's going along. And then finally, instead of updating our lead, we are updating the custom setting that we have been working with throughout this entire time, right? This incremented it and set the value back to our custom setting. And this one is just updating our custom setting overall. So we've now, as we're going through our flows, we should be able to see this value change as we start working with the different records that we're going with. So I know I've said a lot of stuff, I've done a lot of theory. Let's actually see this working inside of our org. I'm going to jump in and create a new lead. Let's call this person Johnny Test. Let's just give it a test company. And some of the key things that we need to think about, and this is more for my example, right? But we know we have to set a lead source to web. And since we're working with lead assignment rules, we have to set we have to let Salesforce know that we want to activate, use our lead assignment rules. Some other things to check here is we are not setting any value inside of the custom auto number that we've created. What we're hoping is that when we hit save, right, our flows are going to kick off. It's going to set this value in here. And then the lead assignment rules will then do the assignment for us. So let's hit save. And I'm already seeing our rep has been assigned, but let's validate some of the numbers that we have in here, right? So our lead source web number, that custom validation rule that we've created, is set to 2, and 2 is equaling out to 3. It might be counterintuitive when you think of the modulus function and all of that, but 2, the value of 2 yields 3, right? For the number of round robins that are working through this. And if we just really quickly check let's go back to the lead assignment rules. Lead assignment rules, we should be able to see that if the value is set to 3, then the value is set to 3, our rep should be 5. All right, let's scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Our rep is set to 5, the value is set to 3, right? This auto number that we have created is totally out of sync, or it doesn't depend on Salesforce's global value, right? It can be the value that we care about. And some of the other cool things really quickly is that let's refresh our custom setting. We'll see that this value has changed to 2. So we know both of our flows are going off and this value is getting incremented. And let's say we did a huge data load and need to manually change this number, or we want to start at a new number, right? We can easily do that in our custom setting. Just put that to whatever number we actually care about, right? And then let's clone this. Let's say that this is Mary Test, making sure that we're checking this box again. This is also checking. We could leave this or we could clear it out, right? As we're going through, let's hit save. And we see that the lead assignment rule has kicked off. The number that we're starting with now is 8001, right? The number has changed. And then our round robin number has gone through. So the key to all of this is the auto number that we have created, right? It doesn't need to just be on the lead source criteria. This could be on anything that we want. And then just some fun stuff to pull it all together with the round robin. One last thing that I want to bring up is for our flow, right? There's technically some ways that we can combine this into one flow, maybe an after flow, and use some additional code. But I think it's fun to really kind of stretch our knowledge about the order of operations. And then specifically on the custom setting update, right? Custom settings, they're a little bit of an older type of backend automation tool that we can use. And custom metadata types are a little bit newer, but as of right now, custom metadata types cannot be updated inside of flows. So I think that's a discrepancy between the both of them, and which is why we're using custom settings. But if or when custom metadata types get that capability, right, then I would probably lean more on using a custom metadata type for this type of solution. But they both generally work the same. They're both like background setup objects as you're going through it. So that works out really fun. And I think that's kind of it, right? We're able to create our custom auto number field, right? It's not just based on the standard one, and we're then able to use some of the power of flows and different automation tools to be able to set our custom number and the round robin field that decides our owner. So I'll pass it back to Jen, and I think that's the end of my demo.
Great. Thanks, Warren. That was a really creative solution using custom settings. And I think that's the first time I've seen a flow update a custom setting record. So I'm going to tuck that away in my back pocket for some future solutions. So thanks for that.
Perfect.
All right. So we're going to move on to Corinne. So can you describe your use case and then show us how you built it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the question I encountered was, how can I embed multiple rubrics into our Salesforce org and communicate the results of those rubrics in a meaningful and sustainable way? I administer Salesforce for a nonprofit called EdReports, and the organization's mission is to give folks the information they need to advocate for, find, and demand high-quality instructional materials for all students from kindergarten to high school. The central way that EdReports does this is by publishing reviews of curriculum. We contract with educators from across the country. We give them the curriculum and some tools to assess it. And then we publish our findings on our website. So anybody who is wants to advocate for or find really great curriculum, they can find those reviews there. We track all of this work inside of Salesforce with a suite of custom and standard objects. And now reviewers for EdReports are looking at instructional materials, as you can imagine, that span wide age ranges and a lot of different content areas. So they need different review tools, different rubrics in order to properly assess them. You wouldn't want to use the same tool to look at teaching kids how to read in kindergarten as you would for looking at high school science, right? So we've got multiple review tools. They have different requirements and they have different scoring levels. How can I embed that into Salesforce? So I also want to make sure that this solution is sustainable, because as the knowledge and needs of the education field change, we at EdReports iterate on our review tools, which means I have multiple versions of review tools to also take into account as well. So I'm looking to design an easy way for one of my users to turn one of these raw number scores from these rubrics into information that's quick and easy to read, and at the same time be easy for an admin to update. I want to be able to house historical data and want it to work well with all of the different variables at play. So after some chewing time on this problem, I decided I was going to combine custom metadata types and flow. So let me share my screen and we'll take a look at what I did. So we're taking a look at an example of one of the custom objects that we have built inside of our Salesforce org. It's called the grade level report. And you can see here we've got a naming convention, so we know what instructional material it is that we're working with, the year that we're looking at it, and the specific grade. And then here comes the meat and potatoes of this particular use case. We have here the specific review tool that was used by the reviewers. We have the version of the tool that this review utilized. We also have here the specific grade level. And down here we have these different gateways. These are different scoring areas. And depending upon how a review moves through this first scoring area determines whether it moves on to the next scoring area, hence why we call them gateways. So I have here a number field, and down here is where I want the magic to happen. I have these little emoji balls. I went with emoji balls because then we can still use text since this is technically text type. And I want someone to be able to come in here, enter in a number, click save, and it's going to spit out one of these colored balls here. You'll also notice with some of my review tools, there's also this checkbox here. Some of the review tools have specific rules on if subscores have a 0 in it. So I need to be able to capture that as well in case what gets calculated needs to be modified. So we've got a lot of variables here. We've got the specific review tool, we've got the tool version, we've got the actual score, and whether something is going to be modified. I'm going to capture a lot of that information inside of a custom metadata type. So I'm going to go into Setup, and in Quick Find, look for custom metadata types. So what is a custom metadata type? Custom metadata types are a lot like your traditional objects inside of Salesforce, but instead of being an object that's meant to capture data from your users for them to utilize, this is capturing data for Salesforce on the back end to utilize. It's a great place to embed your org's business rules, conditional standards, and in fact, that blog that you first posted, Jennifer, from 2021, this is how I first came to custom metadata types, trying to avoid hard coding. Again, thinking about the sustainability of the different automations that I built. It's a really great tool anytime you want to embed business rules that need to be updatable. So let's take a look at this particular custom metadata type that I built, the review tool. I'm going to click in here. So we're looking at the bones of the review tool here. You can see I've got some standard fields that are always going to be created no matter what you do with your custom metadata type. But I also have the option of custom fields. You can also assign page layouts, develop validation rules. It's really quite robust. Looking at my custom fields here, I have a place to store the content and grade. That would be equivalent to the review tool we saw in the grade level report. I have here a way to capture the tool version and these different number fields here to give me specific boundaries on those different gateway areas. Let's take a look at what one of these records looks like. Very basic page layout. I have control over exactly which fields show up where and in which order, thanks to that page layout. So it's really easy for me to look for information. I also have the ability to add help text. So If I'm coming back and it's been a while, I need a refresh, or another admin is coming in and needs to update these records, can come here to the help text and see that this number here for gateway 1 means that this 37, that's what needs to be equal to or greater than. So looking at this grade level report, if we were looking at that specific review tool, if it was a 37 or higher, that's when you would get that green, that meets. So I'm going to back up to the list view here. I've created my custom metadata type and put in all the fields that I need. Next thing I do is go through and input all of the different records that I would need. You can see I've already done that here with all of the different scores of exactly where cutoffs need to be, the content and grade, tool version. I've got all of my information in that I need to go. Now I'm ready to build my flow. I'm going to open up my flow here. And you can see it's pretty simple, right? It's just a few different elements. I have a record triggered flow because I want to emulate that formula field sort of functionality. And taking a look, the object that we're going to be working off of is that grade level report object. I want it to trigger when a record is created or updated. And because of that, I want to be very specific about my entry conditions so that this isn't just running every single time a grade level report is created or updated. And it's going to be looking for those variables that I identified earlier, as well as whether the created date is null to signal that it's a brand new record. We're updating the record that kicked off the flow so we can utilize fast field updates. So I've got my flow all ready to go as far as when it should trigger. The next thing that I need to do is create my variables that I want to hold my different values. This step technically is not super necessary. You could just pull directly from the record. I like to delineate them. I find it's easier to read very quickly, to know exactly what sort of information I'm working with from this grade level report record. For me, it just makes things a little bit easier. So you can see I've created a variable for the number total, that checkbox about whether a score could potentially need to be modified, the specific review tool that was used, and which version of that tool was used. So I've got all my variables ready to go. Now it's time to assign values. Simple assignment element. I'm going to set my different variables to equal whatever the values are on the grade level report. Now that my variables have values inside of them, I can look for which custom metadata type record is going to come into play here. So I'm going to add a get records element. And the object I'm going to look for is what I have named my custom metadata type. So if I come in here, you'll notice I can enter in just the name of it, review tool. And if you're ever not sure, in the API, it will have this suffix of MDT to delineate that what you're working with is a custom metadata type object. But the rest will seem very, very familiar. You know, I have set my conditions of which review tool record I want it to find. I want it to find the record that has a content and grade value that matches my review tool variable, and the tool version value that equals my tool version variable. That should be a one-to-one match, so I'm not going to sort my records. I'm only going to keep the first. And because my metadata type record doesn't have that many values, I'm going to go ahead and automatically store all fields. If you have a complex custom metadata type, feel free to dial in and be more specific. So My variables have values. I have found the custom metadata type that I need to reference. Now I can build my formula to help me calculate which little emoji ball is going to be applied to my grade level report record. And expand this so it's easier to see. Because I'm working with emoji balls in a pick list, I can use a data type of text. And you'll see here, it's just a series of embedded if statements. To translate here for folks who are less familiar with formulas, first it's going to look to see if that gateway total value is blank. And if so, it's going to leave it the white ball. There's nothing to calculate. And then it's going to be done. But if it's not blank, it's going to look at the gateway total, compare it to that custom metadata type, specifically the does not meet value. And if it's less than what's on the custom metadata type record, it's going to give it the red ball, and then it's going to be done. But if that's not true, it's going to look at the gateway total and compare it to the custom metadata type to see if it's greater than or equal to whatever number's in there. And it's going to see if that checkbox has been clicked on, because we have that special rule sometimes with my review tools, right? If both of these things are true, it'll give it the green emoji ball. And if none of those are true, but there's a number in there, it's going to default to the yellow emoji ball. It looks complicated, but I really recommend getting in there with formulas and experimenting. Take the time to format your formulas out so it's easier to keep track of, your commas and your parentheses. It's totally worth it. So I've got my formula. Now I can set my record value. I've got an assignment element. And all I have to do is set the field on the grade level report to equal the value that's calculated by my formula. My flow's all built. I can save it, activate it, and now we can see it in action. I'm going to go back to my grade level report record, and let's check it out. So I'm going to set this first to Science K through 5. We'll leave it as the most recent tool version, and I'm just going to put a number in there. Boom, it turned red. What if I change just the number? Boom, it turns yellow. What if I change the review tool? Boom, it turned red. Let's take a look at Math K through 8, because we know that it had that that checkbox there. And I'm using dynamic forms so that this checkbox only pops up when my users, when it's pertinent. And let's save. You'll see at a 14, it's green, but if I hit that checkbox and hit save, bumps it back down to yellow. So my flow is working. The custom metadata type is informing this formula for this pick list field. My users have that formula field-like functionality. And as EdReports iterates on its review tools, I can come here to custom metadata types and input new records. So these reports that were done in the past still maintain their historical data, but the reports moving forward use the latest and greatest tool that EdReports is using to share with everybody what high quality instructional materials are out there. And that's how I combined custom metadata types and flow. Back to you, Jen.
Great. I love seeing these creative solutions, and I love, love, love custom metadata types. Been
Same.
using them for years. And the cool thing is, not only could they be used in flow, code, formula, fields, validation rules. It's very, very useful across multiple configuration types. So thank you, Corinne.
They're so versatile, and I just can't sing their praises enough.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so I know there are a bunch of questions that you already have in the queue. I already queued it up. So just a reminder, if you do have a question for Warren or Corinne, start your question with a Q colon so I could quickly flag those for the Q&A, and we'll be back in a All right. Okay, so I know a bunch of people missed this when I first showed it on the screen, but if you want to access the blog that talks about custom labels, custom settings, custom metadata types, you can use the sforce.co/no hard-coded IDs and get quick access to that. And this recording will be available right after the live stream, so then you could go back and access this URL as well. Okay, so going to exit that out and just wanted to give shout out to Corinne from a few folks. Jason said, great definition of custom metadata types. And Pablo, love emoji balls. Now, if you could do
I
the
need to
emoji
give a
balls,
shout out.
Go ahead.
I need to give a shout out. That wasn't originally my idea. This build was a collaboration with one of our consultants, Reagan Spurlock. That was originally her idea. So I just took that and I was like, how do we automate that? So Reagan Spurlock gets the credit for those emoji balls.
So now if you could actually record and play the boom thing, like anytime you make an update, that would be cool. Like that sound effect. All right, so to the questions. First one is from Mark Jones for Warren. For the round robin flow from Warren, would it hypothetically be possible to have that included in a screen flow and see it update live with a reactive screen flow?
That's a really great question. And we would see the value. That would be something that I would need to test out, right? Because I think it's when you think about an auto number field, it's kind of set in place, right? You don't want it to change. The one on the specific record, you don't want it to change if another one changes. But that doesn't mean like maybe you want it to always see this global number for a different use case or something like that. And at first glance, I feel like that won't work. Like in terms of being reactive, you would need to refresh the page, but it's definitely something that I'm going to test out now that somebody's brought it up. I don't know if any of you two can kind of think of if that's going to work or have any thoughts behind this one.
I'm not sure, but definitely a good use case to go play around with.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, next question is from Andrew. And he asks, can someone explain when it's best to use custom metadata types versus custom objects, such as gateway scoring thresholds for a custom object?
I would say it's going to depend on who you're envisioning is keeping that updated, right? How often that needs to be updated or inputted. The specific builds, we do iterate on those review tools, right? But it's not something that we're iterating on a lot. It's like it's not like we have a new review tool every 3 months. It stays pretty static. So in this case, maybe it's okay that an admin has to update that because it's not a big lift. But if you have a use case where that data is changing and being updated on a regular basis. Maybe you do want your users to be the ones that are in charge of making sure that that's up to date, in which case, yeah, custom object. I think it's going to depend upon, the cadence, how savvy your users are. You really got to dial in and not only know the business case, but who are the people interacting with it too.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next question is from Carlene. Why would you use a custom setting instead of just creating a formula field on the lead object?
I'm assuming this one's for me in the auto number value. If you kind of want to think about it, right, a formula field, the value is for the most part set in stone. If you, let's say you wanted to increment that value for each of your leads or something like that, then you may need to like manually go in and set that number to whatever it is. And how do you know what to start at? Where do you increment, right, as you're moving through the different values? So when you look at a custom setting, though, it's more of an object that's in the background, like that global type of object that you can manipulate. You can set that value that you need. It's not dependent on any. Technically, it's not dependent on any specific record or anything like that. It's the value is set on its own. Yeah. So formula fields, they definitely they will like render the value once you load the page. They'll do that calculation, whereas a custom setting, the value will always exist, and you can use that value in formula fields. You can use it in validation rules, you can use it in flows, code, right? You can use it kind of anywhere, whereas formula fields, they don't have that kind of like staticness or that existence outside of just being a formula field.
Okay, great. So our next question is from Carmine. What happens to a flow trigger for multiple records at the same time? Can there be leads with the same auto number?
This is a great question, and I was kind of thinking about it as it's going through. I'm like 99% certain as as each of the individual records come through for the like lead assignment and the auto number creation, they'll get a separate number for each of them, right? If you think about flows, they're kind of bulkified, but kind of not at the same time. So each of the leads, or whenever you have whatever number you're updating for the auto number, it should increment for each of them as they go through. Now, I said 99 because I kind of want to test this out too, like inserting a bunch of records and making sure the value is going through for all of them. But yeah, it definitely should. Like when you think of, your flows and how, if you insert a bunch, all your flows and your automations are going to run for each of those records as they go through.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question is from Pablo for Corinne. Can we use the is new formula function instead of created is not null to check to see if it is a new record?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds cool. Try it. Let us know.
So, all right, one more question. Another question from Pablo is, can you give some piece of advice on how to write a flow test that uses custom metadata type?
You got me stumped on that one. I'm not sure. I'm going to
Yeah, that
punt
one's.
to my colleagues here.
I was gonna say I can't help you out too much either. Like I know Apex tests pretty well, and I've maybe built one flow test. I don't know if I'm showing my developerness right now, but yeah, and it definitely is something that I'm not as familiar with. So
Yeah, I've not created flow tests either. All right,
sounds like the next episode needs to be on
flow
testing
test.
and flows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I concur.
All right. So let's see. Next question from Mark. What would you recommend if you need to restart the numbering during testing, for example? Should the admin go back to the custom setting record and change the starting number?
Yeah, so I'm assuming this one's for me in the auto numbers. Yes, you can totally go back and reset that number to 0 or whatever starting point you want it to be at. And one thing to kind of think about when you're working with custom settings is that the value, right, cannot be transferred around it cannot be deployed with like chain sets and things like that. So keep an eye on that as you're testing, right? You want to make sure to test, in your sandbox and things like that. When you do your deployment, you can deploy the object, but the data you cannot deploy. So you'll need to go in and have that manual step of getting it updated. But totally, you can reset the number inside of your custom setting.
All right, and we have another question for you, Warren. What if instead of chronological or a number, we want this flow to generate a random number, say a whole number between 0 to 100?
This is an awesome question. There's a few things that I'm thinking about. It is kind of hard to do random numbers, like true random numbers inside of flows, but it's super easy to do it inside of Apex. So to do this, what I would kind of recommend is, and I'm sure unofficial Salesforce probably has some like package or something like that kind of ready to go, but doing an invocable method that will call Apex inside of your flow, call that code to generate a random number, and then spit it back into your flow wherever you called it, and you can do whatever you want from that standpoint. And I kind of remember Pete Lyons, who's also an MVP, built out I think it was actually inside of flows, but built out a way of generating a random number. So he may also be somebody really great to talk about that random number generation. But in Apex, super easy. As far as understanding flow, not that easy.
All right, and we're at time, but I just have one more question to see if we can have Warren show this. Can you do one in debugger to show us under the hood processing for your record trigger?
Sure. Do we want me to share my screen real quick? We're going to jump back into that.
Yep, let me just grab that. All right.
All right, we should be seeing that over here. I did see this question come through, and just like ran the debugger to see what it looks like. Right in here, all we're doing is kind of walking through the same stuff. Right, it's grabbing the auto number, checking the value, and then doing that addition. So it's I think it was 8,001 is what it started at, and now we're at 8,002 as it's going through. Right, and this is then setting the value on our lead. So setting the value on our lead. And then very similarly, I ran the afterflow as well. We can see here, same setup, right? Getting the custom setting record, doing the decision, adding one so that they're still in sync. Technically, the before trigger, started at 8,001, now we're at 8,002. And then we are just setting that value, updating the record back on the custom setting, right? So this kind of you need both of them in parallel to make sure that the values are staying the same across the board.
Great.
I hope that helps.
All right. So we're over time, so let me just quickly wrap things up. If we didn't get through all the questions, I know there's just a couple of them. We will follow up offline. All right, so just to recap, what we learned from Warren is we learned what custom settings are, how to use custom settings in Flow, and how to create an auto number fields with custom criteria. And from Corinne, we learned what custom metadata types are, the use cases for them, and how to use custom metadata type and flow to streamline a sophisticated formula. So tune in to next month when on February 14th, Valentine's Day, when we have presenters Christina Nava and Salesforce MVP Eric Smith, who will show us examples of how they use subflows in their automation. Set the reminder on the live stream page now by using the short URL that you see, salesforce.co/AT0214, and be reminded of it later. And subscribe to the Salesforce Admin's YouTube channel so you'll be aware of all our new content, and we'll let you know when the live stream page is up. So now it's your turn. There are 3 actions that you can take after this episode. Complete the custom metadata type basics trailhead module. Then read the Salesforce Admin's blog, The Ultimate Guide to Flow Best Practices and Standards, and set up a basic lead round robin using that short link that you see. And continue learning from the great content produced by the admin relations team for you admins. Visit our website, admin.salesforce.com, to find all the latest blogs, podcasts, and videos. Listen to the Salesforce Admins podcast hosted by Mike Gerhold and Jillian Bruce at all the places that you get your podcast content, and watch past episodes of Automate This via our playlist on the Salesforce Admins YouTube channel. And I want to give a huge thanks to my guests for starting off the new year, Warren and Corinne. You guys were awesome. So thanks for sharing custom metadata types and custom settings with Flow. All right, and thank you to all of you for joining us for this Automate This episode. I look forward to seeing you at future sessions. Remember, the best way to be notified when we live stream is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page. You get an email reminder on the day of the event, and we'll also post upcoming sessions on our various social channels. So follow us on X at Salesforce Admins, LinkedIn, and the Trailblazer community. See you next time.